So I guess this song is maybe not that famous. I'm not actually sure. I remember it being a huge deal for me to learn to play it. And now I'm trying to think of why that is, because I didn't really have, I guess there was like a Barry Harris, Sonny Stitt recording that I heard. I think one of my teachers, while this is really like when I was still living in Denmark, and one of my teachers told me that it was a very difficult song. So that was like the thing to figure out. And I wanted to learn it by ear, and it was difficult to sort of figure out what the changes were at that point in time. And it is also like it is a complicated progression. It's a Cole Porter song, because I love Cole Porter songs, I think. What's not so typical is that this song actually doesn't have that much form minor, which is kind of what I associate with him anyway. I'm playing it in E flat. There's another really famous version of it from Sonny Rollins, and the changes I play are pretty close to that, with a few, I think with a few other bass notes here and there. But that's sort of, I just took the changes that I kind of like with the melody by now, because that's what works the best. It's one of those songs which is kind of like an AABA, but it isn't actually an AABA, but it still kind of has a bridge. So that kind of still has the same thing to me. I gave it an intro that I'm also using as an outro, and there's also some pentatonic tricks. Actually a new one that I discovered while making this, so that's also nice. And that will also probably appear in a YouTube short, not too far from now. But yeah, so I gave it an intro that I'm also using as an outro, which is like sort of a vamp that I just played. So E flat 6 to D flat 7 to C7 to B major 7. So it's really just sort of some movement, and then I just want to not end up on the 5 chord, but end up on this flat 6 major 7, which is of course like some sort of minor subdominant sound, and then just have that as a loop. I like those kind of things. Don't know if that's because I've listened a lot to Brad Mehldau. He tends to do similar kind of vamps that are not exact turnarounds a lot. Yeah, I think with the intro, there's not really a lot going on that's worth talking about. It's E flat 6 to the D flat 7. The one thing that's worth noticing is that I'm of course keeping the melody in the root in the melody all the time. And then I guess the rhythm of that last bar is also something that repeats. That also kind of repeats when I come back to it at the end, even though with all my arrangements here, they are kind of improvised, so I don't remember exactly what I played in the intro when I get to the outro. So it's sort of, it's not set in stone. That's just not how it works. So let's get to the theme. So the first part of it, the melody, is just the root. And it's kind of similar to I Remember You, which I've also done an arrangement of a few years ago. Because it goes to this A half diminished D7, which of course is just a reharmonization of having like some sort of A diminished or F sharp diminished going back to the tonic. So that's what's happening here, which is of course similar to I Remember You exactly. And here in this arrangement, you'll see that more often, that I'm trying to add sort of small movement within the chords, and sometimes just using that instead of playing the entire chord. So that's also why I'm coming out like this, adding back to the melody, and then another fill. So really just playing that A flat 7. Actually, when I play this song with other people, I don't usually play the A flat 7. I just stay on the E flat major for 2 bars here. But in this case, for the arrangement, it just worked so nice to have that. And then you could have sort of bluesy kind of sound on it, right? So, and then down to G minor 11, and then coming out on the D here, adding the rest of the chord, and then it's traveling up. So really, what the melody is here is of course is like a C minor 7 arpeggio, and then I'm harmonizing a part of that to the F, to this F minor 11. And here I added, this was a little bit tricky, but it worked out when I recorded it. Well, at least sort of. It's a little bit unclear. There's a lot happening at the same time in a very short amount of time. Because I have like this approach down to the D, and then the melody skips down to the F. So that becomes like this, coming out on the B flat 7 like this, right? And so this is, I mean, it isn't really another A part, but the melody is kind of like playing the melody, but then from the first melody. So the first melody is like, and here we get, so it's a variation on that first melody. That's kind of why this feels as a second A, even though in terms of chords, it doesn't really have anything to do with the first A, because we start on the 2 chord, right? So we're going, and then to C7. I'm adding a dim chord here, just because that's nice to have in there. Also, just to get a little bit more color. It's kind of like a C7 flat 9, really. Just to have that color in there, because of course it's F minor, so that sound fits. Back to C7, and then now it goes to F7, adding a bit of block harmony to F minor, and then to B flat 7. And then, of course, this is sort of what takes us to the bridge, at least to my ears. And the next part then sounds like a bridge to me. So it starts on G minor 7 with an 11, to G flat diminished. And then here, so this next part, there are a lot of different harmonizations of this. The one I'm using is just the one that I like. I'm not sure if it's not original, and the bass notes are definitely not original, but I'm actually coming out on this. Usually this is a B flat 7 with an F in the bass. I chose to have this F minor 13, because I just think that sounds nice here. And then to C7. Right. And then you get sort of this long trip, and here I'm sort of going for kind of a compromise, I guess, a bit. But yeah, so there are a lot of different ways to harmonize this. I believe the version with Sonny Rollins, they sort of have the third and the bass for most of these, and then you get like a bass line like that. What I'm doing here is I'm starting on B7, so B flat 7 to A flat minor to D flat 7. And then to F minor 7. And I think the other one would be to go actually like a much longer chromatic movement in the bass, because you start on, so that's the entire bridge actually. Like you start on G minor, go down to G flat, to B flat with, now I'm just going to play it as a B flat with F in the bass, and then C with E in the bass, and then B with D sharp in the bass, to B flat with D in the bass, to D flat 7. So you get, it's kind of the same colors as what I'm using. And then I think it's like F minor with C in the bass to B flat. I think that's the original also. And I think that's also, if I remember correctly, that's what Sonny Rollins plays, or Jim Hall, in fact, plays with Sonny Rollins. So, but yeah, I did the other changes. I think they're a little bit easier to play also in this setting. We're using more chords that we already know, and it's just more practical. So the last part here, when I come out in the last A, is really the same as the first. Still using this one as well. And then here it changes. So here I'm going to C7, sorry, to G minor C7, moving up here. And that's because I want to have like this high C here harmonized. And then an example of a 5/5, so F7 being the 5/5 in E flat, having the sharp 11 in the melody. So that's not only a jazz habit, it's also actually something that you find in the standards. I don't know if you find that interesting, but I definitely find that interesting. But I'm actually choosing to harmonize it not with an F7, but with a leading note, so really like E7 up to F7. And then the final cadence, just B flat 7 sus4. You could have played F minor as well, of course, but then you have the root in the melody, and here it's just nice to have the B flat then. And then B flat 7 13 down to, and then I go directly into the vamp. So. And then we get the ending So I'm just sort of stopping it on the B major 7 and then going into, I think I've used this, you've seen me use this before, so drop 2 and 4 voicings, and also drop 2 and 4 voicing of a D minor, which just it's still just an E flat major 7 really, right? So, and then you get this run. And this I'll probably explain because that's like a pentatonic trick that I've kind of, I don't actually how it came, it just sort of appeared out of nowhere. The idea is that if you have an E flat major 7 chord, then there are different pentatonic scales that will fit for that. And I've already talked about in shorts and other places about how you can use chords for that. So in this case, it's E flat major 7. Now, obviously, you can use like E flat major pentatonic, which is C minor pentatonic. So this one, and you can also use D minor pentatonic, which is sort of like the sort of more airy Lydian kind of sound on top of that E flat major 7, right? Like a sharp 11. But that also means that you can kind of mix those two. And what I realized was that if I had a voicing that worked on C minor from the C minor pentatonic, then I could just move it up 2 frets, and then it was in the D minor, and it would still work. And the reason why that's so practical is, of course, because we really like voicings that we can just move around. And it kind of gives you sort of like a shifting between, it has a little bit of that upper structure triad kind of feel to it also, that you're just sort of shifting colors, different colors on top of it, where you have sort of the one like the C minor, E flat major pentatonic sound that's like super home, super down to the root, and then the other one is like really up in the air and much more light. And that's what I'm using here, and then I'm just using like voicings. If you look at this voicing is, so half of them is first this one out of the C minor, right? Then this one is just the next string set. Then this one, which is less obvious, but it's also just a nice sort of open sound with all the fifth intervals in there. So that's kind of what I'm using here. And then I'm just going between them, so and then ending on E flat major 7, oops, like this. So that's really all there is to it. That's how I made this arrangement. I think for next month, probably I'll do a ballad. I kind of have my my sights on Here's That Rainy Day, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do that one. But I felt like doing a ballad for a change. And of course, otherwise, if you have questions on this, or if you have suggestions for stuff I should do a video on, then or a song I should do an arrangement of, let me know about that in the comments. And for the rest, thank you for your support, and until next month.